to all 46,000 of you who are logged on TechQ's very important and critical session today. As you know, we are going through a very strange period in the world where we are fighting a colorless, odorless, tasteless virus that has crippled us and crippled us to some extent. Now, while we are treating with all of the medical nuances, the economic nuances, it is critical for us to also treat with our mental health and mental well-being. And so it is timely for us to have this conversation in relation to COVID-19 and mental health and mental wellness. So in the time that I have, I will attempt to take you through what is mental health, what is mental well-being, what it looks like. I will speak to two common diagnoses that people normally go through in a disaster time. And I will give you some tips that I can share with you. But before I do that, I want to acknowledge that there are multiple sectors of society that is dealing with this. And the reason why I want to acknowledge that is because there is no one brush that can give any form of relief for all the groups at once. So we have groups that are probably elderly, yeah? We have groups that are elderly and vulnerable, right? So you have a double vulnerability, one being elderly and two, having some form of other type of comorbidity, right? We also have children and adolescent, and we can always separate children and adolescent as well, because they too experience this situation differently. We can also include young adults. We can also include working adults, the not so young, probably 30 to 50. And so we have multiple groups. Then we have our groups that are living with a disability, whether it is hearing, sight, or some form of other mental issue, for example, on the autism spectrum, and also other types of diseases that are out there. So when you really think of it, you are looking at multiple people dealing with this situation, and multiple groups require different types of intervention. By a show of hand here, by a finger, how many of you are dealing with more than one group in one household? So you may have the elderly with vulnerabilities, you may have the young, the children, the adolescent, you may also have the working young adult group, you may also have the solid working group between 30 and 50. So let me just see by a show of hand, how many of you are dealing with two and more group setting? Let me see that the show of hand, ladies and gentlemen. Right, I see some hands going up. Right, I see those hands. And so what that means for us is our ability, in some circumstances, our inability to treat with more than one different type of setting or group setting in any one house. I am also starting on the premise that not all houses might be hunky-dory or exciting or good. There may be houses that are also treating with difficulties. For example, homes that are dealing with domestic violence situation, or just violent situation, aggressive situation. There are homes which may be dealing with sex abuse to children. There are homes that are dealing with severe poverty. There are homes that are dealing with all myriad of challenges. And so that in itself becomes a vulnerability. That in itself becomes a vulnerability. And so when I speak this morning, I am speaking to all sectors, because we are all in this together, and our mental health is critical for the survival of not only just Trinidad and Tobago, but for the world at large. Because I tell you this, we are literally being asked to have behavior modification. We, by nature of who we are touchy-feely, very emotional type of people. We like to hug, we like to kiss, we like to be in each other's presence, right? We like to commune, that type of thing. And so to say to you to stay home, to be isolated, in itself becomes a serious challenge. And so the world is asking us, the Prime Minister is asking us, the Minister of Health is asking us, the situation is asking us to be separate to people who like to be very close. And for some, that in itself becomes a major challenge. And so I want to get into it. Let me just peep at the chats to make sure what's going on here. Divine infinite blessing for divine protection, health, well-being, wisdom, strength, comfort, and encouragement to all. Thank you so much, Colleen from Canada. Thank you for that wonderful opening words. It is much needed. And so, as I see Colleen from Canada, what you can do is, if you are elsewhere in the world outside Trinidad and Tobago, feel free to drop in and say where you are from so that we can acknowledge you. And if you have not told a friend or a family yet, please bring them close so it becomes a family event as far as humanly possible. Yeah. So let's go into it. So we have mental health. And people ask the question, what is mental health? Or what is mental illness? For too long, we believe mental illness is the madman on the street. At least so we were taught. But I want you to understand today that there is a difference between mental health and mental illness. Just like there is a difference between physical good health and physical ill health. Just like physical health that operates along a continuum, so too is mental health. Mental health operates along a continuum from mental good health to mental ill health. It means that at some point in our life, we may work along that continuum from mental good health to mental ill health. It doesn't mean, however, you remain with mental ill health. Just as when you become physically ill, you go and seek treatment, so too when you become mentally ill, you too can go and seek treatment. Just as you look out for the common cold, the symptoms that are attached to the common cold, and whatever other type of physical illness, so too must you be able to examine the symptoms for mental illness and be able to seek help to address the mental illnesses. The challenge with us in this country and other parts of the world is that we treat mental health as a taboo. And so we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to discuss it. We don't want to reveal it. And so I could very well understand in this period of pandemic, people might be living or going along the continuum with mental ill health and refuse to speak about it because they may be afraid of what people may say. They may be afraid of what they may consider themselves to be. They might be afraid of what their friends and colleagues may call them. And so as a result of which, we suffer in silence. We suffer in silence. And we suffer in silence for something that is very treatable, something that is common and normal. As a matter of fact, the World Health Organization have said in a publication that 4 in 5 persons would experience some form of depression at some point in your life. So it means that there are 56 of us on this chat. 4 or 5 will have or experience some form of depression. Does it mean that you're mentally ill? Does it mean that you're the madman walking the street? No. It means that we are going through a moment that requires treatment. And as you know, the correlation between mental health and physical health is extremely close, almost inseparable. Because the more you become stressed, the more your physiological self becomes ill. And it means then that you find yourself going to the doctor more and more, and you find that the doctor is saying to you more and more, we're not finding anything that is wrong with you. We are not seeing the back pain that you speak about. We are not seeing the footache that we are talking about. How many of you have been to doctor spending an inordinate amount of money for physical illness that is really tied to our stress and mental well-being? How many of us may have taken sick leave, not because we have the common cold or the flu, but because we are tired mentally, that we are fatigued mentally? How many of us have taken vacation just to take a moment of pause in our life? And so you see the very close relationship. As a matter, it is said that there is no mental health without physical health, and there is no physical health without mental health. So the two is cyclical and it works together. And so while we are dealing with this pandemic situation, we need to take care of our mental health. We need to take care of our mental well-being. At this time, I will pause just to say, I'll take 2 comments. You can unmute your mic, and I can take 2 comments. Let me hear how we're going so far. 2 comments. How are we going so far? Just want to make sure that we are going okay. So 2 comments. How we are doing so far. Just put up your hand and tell me how we are doing so far. Did I tell you that they have prizes as well? Anyone? Let me just peep through. Right, I see Pat Hawaii saying good, 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 right? I will take the comments on the chat as well. But if you want to put on your mic and speak, that is also good. I see Akil saying good, Patrice is saying good, right? So I'm getting a sense that you are understanding the information as I go along, because I know for some it is new information, right? Braffett is saying good. Jacqueline is saying informative, wonderful. So I think that we're okay, we're going good, right? Please remember, if you have questions, you can put it in the chat or you can hold it for later on, whichever one suits you. But I want you to know that it is okay if you want to put on your mic and speak to me as well. So now let me just go here. I see 2 comments coming in. Good, right. So having now explained this whole mental health arena, I want to go into general mental health. I want to talk today about two particular areas that is common in dealing with disasters. 2 particular areas that is common in dealing with disasters, right? And those 2 areas are depression and anxiety. And I will try to break it up by age group so you will understand what depression and anxiety might look like in the various age brackets. Yeah? Because that is important for us to understand. Wonderful. And so I will start with our little ones, because as I indicated to you, we have today children, adolescent, early and late childhood, early and late adolescence. We also have adulthood, young and late, and we also have the elder. And so those are areas that I will try to go through so that you will understand what depression and anxiety look like in those areas. So allow me to start with the younger of the set, our children. And when I say children, I am speaking to early childhood and late childhood. So that might run us between birth to about 11, 12 years around there. And so depression and anxiety look quite differently for those than our adolescent. So for those of you, paper, copybook, and pen, so make sure you're writing this down because I will ask it to you later so that you could tell me exactly what you learned from this, yeah? So make sure you're taking notes. In our early childhood, we are talking about depression and anxiety. In early childhood, you're talking about extreme level of tantrum behavior, an extreme level of tantrum behavior. So it means then that you're throwing tantrum for longer, right? And more intensive. So you find that that is an early indicator that something is wrong. You find a child become very clingy and crying constantly. And so those are basic things you need to look out for. You need to look out for regressive behavior. And when I say regressive behavior, I am speaking to if the child is now sleeping on their own, they may now want to come back into the parent's bed because that is where they feel most comfortable. Yeah. If the child may have been potty trained, you may find that that has been regressed to the period where they were not trained prior. So you may have some challenges there. You may find that the child may no longer want to sleep in the dark. They may want a light. You may find that the child is getting up frequently during the night, which may have been a precursor to nightmare and or night terrors. And so those are some of the basic things you want to look out for. You want to look out for the lack of play in children. Children's only job is to play. And so what may happen here is you may find a reduced sense of play. Please do not mistake this for a quiet moment. Please do not look at this as a quiet moment. It is about listening to whether or not that child is playing. Children play with all sorts of things. And so if that child is moping around in a corner, very quiet, something is wrong, right? So that is basically how the depression and the anxiety tackle the younger children. So you want to check in with that child very early to find out what is going on, yeah? The other one I want to look at is our adolescent. Now, our adolescent, again, is broken up into two categories. Young or the early adolescent and the late adolescent. Early adolescent or late adolescent. In the early adolescent, you will also find a level of defiant behavior. They may become very silent in their approach, right? They also may be very sulky, and their eating and sleeping patterns may also change. So you want to get a very clear understanding of what is normal adolescent behavior. For those of you who have adolescent children, you know adolescent behavior is a very tumultuous period. You know that it is very tumultuous. You know that the adolescent is moving left, right, and center, and at a speed sometimes where we cannot even acknowledge what is going on. We are confused. And so you want to make sure that the behaviors that they are displaying are not in line with ordinary adolescent behaviors. When you speak about late adolescent, you're talking about aggressive behavior, defiant behavior, silent behavior, self-harming behavior. And when I speak about self-harming behavior, I am speaking about cutting, pulling of hair, injuring oneself, creating pain, and which may also lead to a level of suicidality. So it is critical for you to be very close in monitoring your adolescent, early and late adolescent. Sometimes you are seeing a level of behavior that is unexplained and you trying to figure out what is going on, please do not mistake this for ordinary adolescent behavior. As a matter of fact, delinquent behavior is very closely linked to adolescent behavior, because we believe that the adolescent, may be a delinquent by the things that they do. But really and truly, that is ordinarily adolescent behavior. For example, the mind of an adolescent is hell-bent on risk-taking behaviors. They are risk-taking behaviors. And so it is important to understand that is where they are, that is what they're about. And it is very important to understand how that is going. And so the other area is young adult. Depression and anxiety in the young adult may be withdrawal, inhandemia, which is a severe level of sadness. They may feel sad all the time. They may withdraw from things that they love, from people that they love. You might find that there is a change in the way they dress and they take care of themselves. You may find that there is a heightened level of change in sleep and eat. You may be sleeping too much or sleeping too little, eating too much or eating too little. You might find that there's a lot of despair, dark and doom thoughts, right? You may find that they have withdrawn from everybody in the household. You may find that there's a drop in their work or their routine may be interrupted. So it is important to understand that. When I speak about now the other age bracket, which is about the 30 to about 50, depression and anxiety may come across as irritability, anxiety level, heightened quarreling and always fighting, that type of behavior. Everything seemed to be a worry and a panic, yeah? And then I want to go quickly to the elderly, because depression and anxiety for the elderly may also be about now a level of isolation that is very different to the normal level of isolation. For the elderly, everything might be, they might be saying, I am okay, everything is okay, everything is always okay. Taking care of oneself might be now a difficulty. They may worry themselves into new physical and mental challenges as well. And so that is important as I quickly along the entire age span so that you can get a sense as to what this depression and anxiety might look like from early childhood all the way up to the elderly. And so this foundation is important so that we can understand how to take care of you now in the midst of all of this. That is important. Because I tell you this, once you have or begin to live in a place of depression and anxiety, everything else in your life start to feed off or resemble that of, or is tied to that level of anxiety and depression. And I want that to sink in for a moment. Because if you cannot take care of your mental well-being, trust and believe other factors of your life will be impacted. And so it is important for you to understand, first and foremost, what it is you are dealing with before you can become healthy. Because for many of you right now, you don't know what your symptoms represent or what it looks like or how you can deal with it. And so when you talk about a person living with depression and anxiety, that will affect your relationship with your children, because now you don't know what your child is going through, and so you may respond from a punitive perspective. You may not know what your spouse might be going through, so you may respond from an angry perspective. You may not understand what the elderly might be going through, so you may respond from a frustrating perspective. And so that then will lead to a further level of anxiety and depression within the household. That may also cause a problem with your work, especially if you're working from home. That may cause a problem with how you plan for your future, your financial future, and otherwise, because now you are not in a good mental health place to engage in proper planning for what is to come later on. As a matter of fact, many of you may be in this doom and gloom place because you don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. You are not sure what is going to happen next week, next year. And so you may be in a very dark place. And as a result of that, you may not be planning. As a matter of fact, you may be home spending a lot of money. You may be home spending an inordinate amount of money. Many of you may have gone through your savings already or are quickly going through your savings. Many of you may be living paycheck to paycheck and was trying to manage, and now you are no longer able to manage because probably a paycheck has been cut. Many of you may not know where tomorrow dollar may come from. Many of you may be calling the credit union to find out, hey, what can we do? And so this is very much linked to your mental well-being, because from the time you start to panic and worry and stress, your emotional response will now change. Your emotional response will now change. And when your emotional response has changed, you now start to live from an emotional place that is going to cost you, in many respects, family relationship, financial relationship, work relationship, because you are operating from a place of depression and anxiety. Are you all following me so far? Let me get a little comments, a raise hand or something if you are following me so far, and if you are understanding the information, most importantly. I see one here following. Wonderful, wonderful. Right, I see that, I see that. Right, that is important. It is important. Thank you, Jackie, for sharing it with others. Wonderful, wonderful. Nice. Don't forget to leave your comments and questions as I go along so that I can engage with you at a later time. So I want to get back into this because it is important. It is important because some people don't understand the link between taking care of me to ensure that everything else is taken care of. And I want to give you an example. Dr. Nadine Burke, in her book called The Deepest Well, and from her YouTube, spoke about in the forests and how do you respond to traumatic incidences. And this in itself is trauma for most of us, if not all of us. And I want you to understand, from the time you are traumatized, you see life through a very different lens, a very different lens. You see life very differently after a traumatic incident. And this is a traumatic incident. As a matter of fact, Nadine Burke said, if you could imagine yourself in the forest, running from a bear, and this bear is chasing you. And so in that chase, your amygdala is going to jump in. Fight, flight, or freeze. Your chest is going to be pounded, sweaty palms. And what is the natural thing? Let's just say we outrun the bear. So we go back to homeostasis or we go back to a normal life. But I want you to also think about, you are being chased by a bear every single day, and the bear isn't going away. And so you are constantly being heightened. It means, ladies and gentlemen, that the way we are living now is heightened, and so our emotional responses are also heightened. And a heightened emotional response will cause our cortisol, our amygdala in the brain, all of these things to constantly be on drive. And so it requires you and I to figure out how to manage these things. How to manage these things. Because if these symptomatology continue for a long time, you may find your physiological self, your mental well-being, your mind will be racing constantly, your heart is going to be pounding constantly, high blood pressure is going to be through the roof, and all other forms of ailments are going to be exacerbated. And so it is important for you to understand, right? Right, and it is important for you to understand what exactly you are going through emotionally and how to treat with it, right? How to treat with it. And so I want you to understand that first thing, please, paper and pen, first thing I want you to look at is your emotion, right? Your emotion. Are you in touch with your emotion? Are you in touch with your emotion? Do you understand what your emotion is saying to you and what you are interpreting from your emotion? That is important for us to understand. Are you in touch with your emotion? Because right now, many of us are being controlled by our emotion. We are being controlled by our emotion. And when we are controlled by our emotion, we are therefore leaving ourselves open to whatever our emotion determines we should do. As a matter of fact, for a very long time you have heard, don't make decisions when you are emotional. And there's a reason for that. We are no longer in control of our rational thinking. And as a result of that, we may make decisions. For example, financial decisions. How many of you have been spending money on things stocking up unnecessarily, probably things that we don't need? What exactly is going on? How is this emotion helping our family situation right now? Those are very critical situations. How many of us right now, by show of hands, have a difficulty managing our own emotion during this thing? Come on, let me see by a show of hands. How many of us right now have a difficulty managing our emotion? So everybody here, emotion unlocked. So somebody saying that they manage through prayers, very important. Someone is saying some days, right? And I will talk about that because there may be dip and highs or highs and lows, right? I see somebody, what is the terminology for severe sadness in Handinia, right? And so understanding your emotion is important. So how do you treat with that? It begins by having a conversation with the people in your life. And from children all the way up. So it means that you should be able to speak about how you feel. You should be able to allow the children to express how they feel. Because your emotion is very closely tied to your feelings. And so if you are not allowed to express how you feel, then you allow all of that to fester inside of you. If you do not speak to someone and you take on all of that, you may find yourself becoming extremely depressed or stressed out. So the first thing I want you to look at is your emotion. Taking charge of that emotion is going to be critical and important for all of us. I see someone is saying they manage through exercise and prayers very well. What is you say how you feel, example, sorrow, people shut you down. That is exactly what I said there, Pat, that is exactly the level of challenge when treating with mental illness. Because for a lot of us, if we don't see someone has a cast on or in a wheelchair, we don't acknowledge that they are ill. We want them to open the blind or go and take a walk and think that that will solve our mental health challenges. But no, mental health is real. And so one of the things that we need to do in our households right now, in order for us to get through this, is to acknowledge that mental health is real and to acknowledge that people feel sad. And it is okay to feel sad. It is okay to feel depressed or feel anxious during a time like this. It is okay. And no one should feel a how in Trinidad terms to express that, listen, today I'm feeling myself. That is sometimes how we describe a level of depression and anxiety. I'm feeling myself today. I know what's going on, I can't really explain it, but I am feeling myself today. And so that is an important start, because you have acknowledged in the first instance that something is going on with you that you cannot really explain. But we can begin to explore how you feel, what is going on in your physiological self, your body, what is going on in your mind. Those are going to be critical and important factor as we treat with this. We need to understand exposure. Exposure is one of the things that is causing us a great level of panic and anxiety. Limit your exposure to the news. Listen to trusted source of news people. For example, the Ministry of Health. Ensure that you're probably listening to the World Health Organization. All of this unnecessary WhatsApp messages from people who got information from wherever they got it. Put that away. If you want to manage your well-being, your mental well-being, I am saying to you to be deliberate about putting down the phone and the news for selected periods during the day. Put it down as a family, create a phone etiquette. As in, we will have our phone between X time and X time. And to limit your exposure to all of these messages that is coming into you. The news of medicine and the news of doom and the news of gloom constantly on your phone will keep you in a heightened state. The clinical term is hypervigilance, but the Trinidad term is jumpy. So it will keep you very hyper, because the first thing you want to do in the morning when you wake up is run to the phone or the computer to see what is going on, to see how much died, to see what death. That keeps you very anxious to the point where you cannot sleep properly. So you want to limit the amount of news that you are intaking every day. The other area that is going to help is to be very conscious of your schedule. In this moment of COVID-19, we are told primarily what we can and cannot do. And that is what they have to do. That is important. But in the mix of all of the things that we can and cannot do, you need to identify the things that you are in control of. Because what is going on is our days are going by and people are waking up 11, 12, 1, 2 in the day, just seem to not be in control of anything, not in control of what, and so they find themselves being very lethargic, their mind is confused, they find themselves very disoriented in the day and time. And so the important thing for you and your family to do is to sit down together and create a daily schedule. The schedule should have you waking up at a very reasonable hour during the day And your schedule should include work time, play time, rest time, socialization time, because it is important to factor all of those things in. And I want you to understand, rest is different from socializing. That is very different. Creating a family schedule is critical. Sometimes it has one computer home, and 4 of you all need to use that one computer. That's turning into a bacchanal in the house. So creating a schedule and expressing the schedule to the school teacher, to your boss, is also going to be critical. But one of the things that you need to do is take control of your life. Take control of your life. It is important because there are things that you can control. And so what you need to do is wake up in the morning and take control of those things. Because what it will do, it will give us a sense of tomorrow. It will give us a sense of we are moving forward. And on that note, I want you to acknowledge there are positive things in your life and to take control of the positivity. Too many of us are seeing things in this dark and gloom place. And so my advice to you is to take control and to see things from a positive perspective. Because what is going to happen here is the more we see things in doom and gloom, we start to make bad decisions based on how we feel in doom and gloom, and those decisions are going to render difficulty come the end of this. And so it is important for you to begin to see positivity in your life on a daily basis and to take charge of those positive things in your life. As a matter of fact, make it a family event where people can come up with positive things that they think they can do now and positive things that they can look forward to at the end of this process. Those are going to be critical and important things. For many of the young people or the young adults or the young working people, it is very, very, very difficult not being sociable. This social isolation does not mean disconnection. It doesn't mean that you are to isolate yourself. And so you have to be deliberate about communicating with one another, using the social media, using these mechanisms to connect. As a matter of fact, be deliberate about connecting with your elderly because they are particularly vulnerable to social isolation. And they may recluse themselves to a corner trying not to bother anybody. And so you want to make it a deliberate attempt to communicate with them on a daily basis, especially if you are not living in the same house with them. But on the whole, communicating with one another, having WhatsApp chat, including telephone call, parents, you may also need to encourage your young people to connect with their classmates via social media. And if you don't have a smartphone, you may have to put a little extra $1 on the phone. And I know TSTT and Digicel now giving a special where you could connect and stuff to their friends, because the teenagers are particularly vulnerable because their peers are critical and important to them. And being without their peers can cause a level of depression and anxiety unheard of. And so you want to be able to allow everybody to connect. Social isolation does not mean disconnection. We could be socially isolated, but we can communicate and connect to one another. That will also help us in our mental well-being. Now, I want to tie in what I call feel good. Feel good. We in this country like to feel good. So we like to drink and party and have other type of risky feel-good coping mechanisms. And in a time like this, we may find ourselves reaching to substances or other risky behaviors to feel good. Ladies and gentlemen, You have to protect yourself from the feel-good syndrome, where we are drinking in excess. We want to smoke drugs where we never smoked drugs before. You want to smoke all the marijuana. You want to drink all the alcohol. You want to engage in all the risky sexual behaviors to feel good. And so it is critical for us to pay particular attention to those feel-good syndromes so that we don't cause ourselves to drink and or use substances so that we can feel better. That is dangerous, and I am seeing in some respect the effects of that. And so it is important for us to safeguard. So parents, you need to pay particular attention to your children and to your young adults. And you as an adult should also be paying particular attention to what you consider to be a feel-good situation. And so I spoke about isolation. How do you reconnect socially? Creating a standard plan for the family. I also spoke about your emotions. So remember, later on you need to tell me, huh? So the first thing is our emotion and taking control. The second thing, and of course, with a dysregulated emotion, we make bad decisions, and that is bad financial decisions as well. I spoke about being deliberate, about creating a plan for your family, a plan that is a positive plan. Positivity and planning for now and tomorrow is critical. I also spoke about isolation and how social isolation does not mean disconnecting. That is important, right? I see together we aspire, together we achieve. I love it, I love it. And the other thing I want to talk about is how are we now going to engage in meaningful conversation with each other? Because I have found that we are not engaging in meaningful conversation with family members. And that is causing a lot of panic and pain in family. And I'm saying this plain. Now is not the time to be fighting. Now is not the time to be fighting. During this stressful period, you need harmony in your household. Your very existence and survival depends on it. And so in all of what we're talking about here, I am encouraging people to reach out and touch one another, to reach out to your family members who you may have not spoken to, and to come up with ways in which you can now have a conversation. That is important as you begin to manage this, because no one, and I like the fact that somebody put together we aspire, together we achieve. No one can survive this on our own, none of us. And so it is important that you reach out to your family members and you begin to have a conversation. It is important for you to so do. The other thing about conversation that I find is very difficult. People have changing fortunes right now. There are those who were working before and they are not working now. There are those who are working for a reduced salary. There are those where no money is coming in. It is important as a family to sit and have a financial conversation. Sit as a family and have a financial conversation. And this financial conversation should be a realistic conversation in terms of where we are right now and what we are dealing with right now and how is it affecting you as a family. No one should be shocked, a financial shock during this. And so family members need to come together and have that conversation, because it may require you to adjust the way you are living. It may require you to adjust spending and borrowing and financing. It may require you to engage in a conversation with your trusted credit union. And so it is important because a lot of us right now are under financial pressure. Those of you who may have small businesses or businesses on a whole. And so it is important to have a financial conversation because this may create an unhealthy level of stress in family. And it may create a lot of bacchanal and split in family. And so it is important to have a conversation about what you are doing. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been speaking for the better part of an hour, right? The last area I want to talk about is anxiety. Anxiety is real. We are all anxious for one reason or the next. We are anxious because probably as a business owner, you are seeing difficult times. We might be anxious because as a business owner, your employees may have had to go home. You may be anxious because you are now home unemployed. You might be anxious because you now have to teach your children and you may not be capable or have the resources to so do. You might be anxious because you are just not sure what is going on in the world and how it will impact you. You may be anxious because you fall under some level of vulnerability. And so that in itself brings you a level of anxiety. And so it is important for us to understand our anxiety. And I want to be very clear. It is okay, ladies and gentlemen, to be and feel anxious. It is okay. You are not abnormal because you are anxious. You are not miserable because you're anxious. You are not a burden because you're anxious. Being anxious in a time of crisis, in a time of disaster, is a normal thing. The critical and important factor here is to understand your anxiety, understand the source of your anxiety, process your anxiety, talk about your anxiety, and treat with it. If you are unable, and I tell you this, the people who surround you are your first line of defense for your anxiety. They are the ones to keep you safe, your family and friends. And if you feel that has not yielded the benefit that you need, then you need to reach out to somebody like me or a psychologist for further help. Please do not medicate yourself either with over-the-counter drugs or with some form of feel-good, for example, alcohol or some substance. Please see a doctor. Do not self-medicate. Oh, I'm not sleeping, so you're going into the pharmacy and you buy a set of sleeping pills. No. Please reach out to a professional. But I also want to say, adults, please manage how you are transferring your anxiety to your children. Because your children will come out of this, and they will come out of this learning something. The question is, what will they learn? And the what they learn will be dependent on what we teach them. So if we teach our children to be anxious and stressed and to drink and smoke when we are worried and stressed out, then that is what they will learn. Resiliency is real, and children are resilient. And so difficult times are okay to teach children resiliency. But how you manage your anxiety, how you manage your emotion, how you manage your difficulty will be important for the young people who are looking on, because they are looking to you for their emotional cues, their psychological cues, their coping cues, and their anxiety cues. And so if you are not managing your anxiety and you are transferring it to your children, you're going to have a house crumbling. But if you can acknowledge your anxiety, find the source of your anxiety, whether it is in your vulnerability, your business, your finances, and then you begin to plan to treat with that level of anxiety, then you can manage this anxiety in a way that does not come across as negative for your children. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I want to pause and I want to take your comment and your questions through our moderator and facilitator, Killer Fraser. I hope I pronounced your name right, sorry about that. And so I want to hear from you because I've spoken for an hour and I've given you a mouthful from what is mental health, what it looks like, the coping mechanisms, from taking control of our emotion to social distancing, doesn't mean social isolation, to our emotion and how we manage our anxiety and all these things. So please, I want you to tell me through your questions what you want to know and how have this information can impact your life and what are you going to do differently moving forward. I turn you to the moderator to help us through this process. I see Carolina saying, I just love the way we are encouraged to validate our emotion and feeling. Yes, to being anxious is normal reaction to a very abnormal situation. Definitely, definitely. Please raise your hand, right? She's speaking. Please raise your hand to have your mic switched on if you wish to speak, right? Again, if you want to raise your hand, you go to participant, right? Click on participant where you are seeing 48, and you're going to see a window open to the right, and then you can click raise hand like I just did there, yeah? So please click so that you can jump in. Lisa is saying, thank you for letting us know it is okay and normal to have a reaction to this situation. Not as important how we manage it. Exactly, thank you. So please feel free to raise your hand so that you can jump in. And so it is important for us to recap. So if you want to also do a recap, you can type in the comments, what are the things that stood out to you today? What are the things that stood out to you today in this 1 hour session here? Feel free to type and let us know, or at least jump in and you can speak it.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Colleen.
Yes. So I certainly appreciate all that you have shared with us, looking at the various characteristics of children, early adolescents. I'm looking at all my notes, but what I found to be very interesting through all of this, it's extremely important that we have a sense of what is our strategy to take care of ourselves, and we may just be able to put little goals into place, but it's very important to be persistent, because when we take care of ourselves, then we are able to take care of others. So I thank you so much, and it has been such a wonderful opportunity to participate. You have done a phenomenal job. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. I see on the chats, Kimberly saying that this information is applicable even outside of the COVID pandemic. I do agree with you. Basic information to keep our families strong and to bring family synergy back. I think it is important. We must take control of our emotion and be deliberate in making positive changes that benefit us and our family. Thank you. I am seeing Jacqueline saying, understanding the source of the anxiety, my takeaway point. That is critical. Because let me tell you this, and a lot of people, they go and they get medication to sleep because they are anxious and they're not sleeping. And then what ends up happening is they are exhausted beyond repair. And the reason why they're exhausted is because we did not, or they did not deal with the source of the anxiety. And in anxiety, your mind is racing. And while you might be sleeping, your mind is still going at a mile an hour, and that renders you tired. So in order to actually sleep, you need to find the source of your anxiety, and for us to treat with the source, and that is a critical aspect of that. So thank you so much. Thank you for your point you have made about managing, right? I see that. I like the point of asking questions concerning our emotion, right? I see George is saying, thank you, we appreciate the information. It is about self-management. and taking control of our lives. What do you do when you have to choose between your job and the care of your children? That is a real, and I mean, it is as real as it gets. And I can't tell you to choose one or the other. I think what is critical during this time is to have open and honest conversation with your employer, and also open and honest conversation with your children in relation to the situation, right? I think that, and I implore employers to be compassionate and to look at this from a human rights perspective, a humanistic perspective in the way we are treating employees. And we should never have employees choosing between their work and or their children. We should find a way to create a balance that can work for all. Right? I say thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Thank you for this wonderful session. Thank you, Ms. Butler, for that. I had a hard time to identify my anxiety before, and it has become worse now with all that is going on. I will try the steps mentioned. Definitely try it and let me know how you feel. Thank you, Mud, for hosting. Thank you for helping us. One, I see some takeaway from Lisa. Tanash, I wonder if I know this person. This name sounds familiar. One, understanding what we are experiencing, and hey, we're going fast. And expect. Two, by showing us how to manage ourselves. And three, the info can be applied to our general life. Wonderful. I love the point about creating a safe space for everyone in the family to be able to express their emotion and to know. Listen, on that point, I want to ask families to have weekly meetings. And this meeting can take, in the case of playing board games, snake and ladder, ludo, draft, whatever. Have this, you fry a piece of chicken and you're eating together, but have family meetings that is deliberate about allowing people to express. Give everybody equal 5 minutes to talk about how they feel, from the baby all the way up, and allow people to express, validate how they feel, and then as a family, try to solve the challenges that they might be having. It is very, very important. I want to know if Ms. Fraser wanted to jump in. I'm not hearing anybody speaking, and I would like if I can have some voice takeaway, someone who want to raise their hand and speak to let us know how the session was for them and their takeaway.
So we have one missed question earlier in the session. Someone asked, what if my husband does not share his feelings and he's a bit grumpy? What do I do in that situation?
One, you allow the space for him, right? You allow him space. And let me generalize. If anyone don't want to share their feeling, you allow them the space, but you also let them know that the door is always open for communication. Please do not go harassing every 30 seconds. Talk to me, what's going on? And you're not saying anything. And what that will do is it will exacerbate emotions. And you don't want to do that. Give people the time and space they need. That person may not know how to express themselves. That person may not know how to express their feelings. And so you don't want to bombard a person to the point where it becomes obnoxious. You want to allow a person the space and the time to speak when they want to, right? And that is why I am saying, if you are deliberate about having family session and having family meeting and having family game night in a relaxed environment, you may find people are talking more about how they feel. Based on the session, I now realize I'm suffering from anxiety. I prefer if you say you are living with anxiety. Let's not have the anxiety define who you are, right? I will try the steps provided here and we'll treat with that. That is important to know. And of course, it is always important, if you need help, to reach out and get help from people that you know in relation to this. Please don't try to self-medicate or treat yourself on your own. Those are dangerous things that I would not encourage at all. Yeah?
I would like to know, in cases where, like at work, if you notice one of your coworkers are experiencing the stresses of dealing with the pandemic differently, or with the uncertainties of work, how do you approach something like that? Because it's a lot easier to approach your relatives, your siblings, your parents, but your co-workers, when you see them maybe pulling away or change, what recommendations do you have? Do we implement the same solutions that you provided here?
Yes, I will start with the last. Yes, we could implement the same. But let me tell you this, most times when it is someone else who recognizes a significant change in us, because sometimes we are in it and we have not recognized that something is wrong. But it is the people around us who recognizing firstly that something is going on. And so it is important for us to look out for one another, be our brother's keeper, because we have that eyesight on people, and that is important. And so what you can do is speak to that person, but sometimes the people may not be ready and or willing, because not everybody want help. Not everybody want help right now, or not everybody want help that can actually be helped. And so you need to recognize those facets and allow your door to remain open should they require help. I'm seeing people are saying that they are going through anxiety living, and it is important to reach out to professionals. And if you have employee assistance program at your work, please access it. And if not, we are always on standby here for you at the Center for Human Development Limited. But it is important either way to reach out and get that professional help. Thank you, thank you. So any questions, Ms. Fraser, we can keep the question coming.
We have Lisa.
Hi, Mr. Benjamin. Again, I just want to say thanks for this session. And most importantly, I am saying thanks for differentiating the difference between mental health and mental illness, because as you were saying in Trinidad, we have away from the time you say mental, anything coming after it, they assume mad and, you know, they distance themselves from it. So that was really appreciated, that people could better understand that I can be in a situation where I'm having a mental health issue, but it doesn't mean that I'm necessarily suffering from some sort of mental illness, you know. So I just wanted to say that I appreciate you dealing with that, because that has been something close to my heart in terms of helping people to understand the difference, you know, and to therefore feel more free and confident to come forward to address situations, because when they don't address the mental health issue, they can end up with mental illness. Thanks again.
Lisa, I think you have put it beautifully. Beautifully you have put it. As a matter of fact, I would like to get that clipping of you saying that there. That is beautifully done, because you are quite correct, right? We go along a continuum from mental good health to mental ill health. And there are days we're going to have a dip, but it doesn't mean that you are diagnosable. Only when you reach a point of being diagnosed with a mental illness, then you are mentally ill. But you can go through life stressors that gives you certain way you feel, and that is important. I love the way you put it there. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Someone is saying, is there a way to access professional help? And I know the Ministry of Health has some hotlines up and running. Again, there are private agencies that you can also get help from. The Center for Human Development is one such agency. And I know people are also tied to their EAP services. So I am not sure if you can access that. A lot of us are doing work via Zoom sessions, whether it is group session or individual sessions. We are doing that here as well. And so that is important to just get that help. I know that the different RHAs have in itself mental health tied in there, and there are mental health numbers that you can call, and so I will encourage you to do that. And if you choose to go privately, there are those agencies that are also working now, but from a virtual perspective, that can assist you. Question, any question, Ms. Fraser?
No, that's it. Oh, there's one other question. How long does anxiety stay with someone?
I am not sure that there's an answer in terms of time frame. Mental illness is not an exact science. And anxiety is not something that comes and goes and I can tell you, take this and your anxiety will disappear in 3 days or in 3 weeks. You understand? And so I don't want to say to you that, you know, no, it can't happen like that. You need to engage in active treatment from a medical perspective, a psychological perspective, an emotional perspective. So those things combined can see a reduction in your anxiety. But I can't tell you in 2 weeks' time your anxiety will go if you take this. So that is important. Any other question?
Can managing your anxiety reduce a level of fear in this pandemic?
Can managing your anxiety reduce a level of fear? Can managing your anxiety reduce a level of fear in this? Fear is tied to anxiety. That is important. Fear is linked to anxiety. And so I think the question is the other way around, that if we manage our fear, we can actually reduce our level of anxiety. And so it is important. That is why earlier I spoke about not dwelling in the doom and gloom story, rather look at things from a positive perspective and plan with purpose. And once you begin to do that, you will recognize that your anxiety will begin to subside. Somebody's asking the name of Nadine's book. Hold for me. The book. So at this moment, I want to say a personal thank you for TechU Credit Union for allowing me the opportunity to be with you guys this morning and to disseminate information. And I hope and pray that the information can be useful to some extent in your personal lives. And on that note, I want to pass it back to our moderator.